Welcome to Talking True. In today's episode, I'm going to be speaking to my dear friend, Diane Goldner, who I've known for 20 plus years now. I really respect Diane. I respect who she is and what she offers. Diane is a world-renowned healer. She's an author and she's a course creator. And in today's episode, we're going to be diving into the meaty topic of creating financial flow. So don't go anywhere. Join us and let's dive right in.
So I want to start with the fact that, everything that happens to us is connected to all kinds of aspects of our vibrational patterning. So when we talk about financial flow, it isn't just, I want to just make this point because I think it's really important. Not that money, it isn't, it's, of course, it's great to have financial flow, but really we want to be in a state of flow in general. And financial flow then becomes an aspect of that. And anything that's happening in the outer world is an indication of what we need to resolve on the inner world. So if you're not experiencing financial flow, it's an opportunity for healing. I think of it as a healing, and I've done some really interesting healings with people around financial flow. And it isn't about money ever. It's always about something else. And then the flow happens, and the flow is a sign that you've healed something. So I just want, and that you're more attuned to the universe. So that's my perspective on financial flow. It's really about healing something in your life, something in you, because your life is a manifestation of you. Okay. So I want to just start with that. And then, in terms of what I have to say, I have so much to share. I really don't know where to begin. I've had my personal journey. And I've also, as I said, done healings with other people. So maybe I should just start with my personal journey. So this many, many years ago, when I was a journalist, I went through a phase where I didn't really know exactly what I was doing. I had decided I wanted to write a book on healing because I had discovered healing, and I thought it would be really amazing to find out if it was real. That's where I was. And I was freelancing at the time, which is just a really hard way to make a living. I was doing really well, but it's just a very challenging road. And I was doing some work with manifesting. I was working with some tapes, and I asked for a certain amount of money. This is how I know this universe is kind of like a computer. And whatever you put in is what you get back. Okay. So anyway, so I was asking for, these tapes suggested I asked for a specific amount. So I did, and nothing happened. So a year passed, and I was getting more and more, let's say, overwrought would be a good word. And so I changed the amount. I actually decided I was asking for too much, and I cut the amount literally in half. And then I got my book contract. And at the same time I got my book contract, the editor-in-chief of Variety, I'd been looking for a job because I didn't know if I'd get my book contract, and I wasn't able to get a job. But then the editor-in-chief of Variety, invited me to high tea, and, he offered me a job. And I said, Peter, I would love to do that, but I just got my book contract. Between the time we set up tea and the time we met, I'd gotten the book contract. And he said, you're going to need money. You're going to be writing a book. You're going to need extra money. I was like, okay. So he offered me a position, and I accepted it. It wasn't full time. It was a special projects editor. And it gave me the time to work on my book. And when I started receiving the checks, I was getting the first amount that I asked for, literally, including my advance and the payments, but they were paying me twice as much as they were supposed to. They were paying me bi-weekly instead of monthly. And of course I had to tell them. And then I got the second amount, which was half the amount. literally. And I thought to myself,
Yeah.
oh my God. So, I was like, wow, you have to be really careful. So there's a lot of different pieces to this when you're manifesting for yourself. And I might go back to this, but one thing is you have to be in a state of surrender. It's not really your business when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen. You just follow your guidance once you set your intention. The other piece is that if you need to clear anything, you have to clear whatever it is. And that's going to come to your consciousness as well in the process of attaining whatever it is you want to manifest. So anyway, I've never forgotten that experience because it was just unbelievable. It was so precise. So
Yeah, that's really amazing. But I love what you've said about having to do the work around clearing things out, because you can do all the affirmations you like, but if you actually haven't done your inner work around inherited patterns and conditioning and all of those things, then there'll be internal beliefs that will just always stymie even the best efforts. And I can speak from experience around this because of how I was raised. But you really do have to look at that, and you have to look at what you believe internally, because obviously that will affect your ability to manifest and be in financial flow or creative flow or whatever.
Right. If you
however
ask for an amount that you don't think you deserve, you're not going to receive that. And that is part of what happened to me. I decided I'd overshot my mark, So I hadn't. The universe was telling me that I hadn't.
That's a great story. So you actually work with people on looking at these patterns and belief systems, correct?
Yes, I work with, I consider everything to be an aspect of your energy. And so I'll do healings for whatever, I mean, it's not, a lot of people think of me as a medical intuitive, but anything in your life that's causing you a challenge is worthy of a healing, right? I mean, there's some kind of energetic block. And what I'm doing is releasing the block. So I can give some really interesting examples. In one case, a woman called me. She was separating. This was a business divorce. She and her partner were going their own ways. Maybe it was a graphic design business. And they had used a house as their business. And it was in a really prime location. And they couldn't sell it. Could not sell it. And so she asked if I would do a healing. And I actually did this healing long distance. For me, it's the same as being in person. And I went into the house in my subtle form, and I, worked on clearing the energy. But what I saw immediately was that there was this haze of anger just like permeating the whole house, because whatever had happened between them, they were angry with each other. And so what was happening is that any potential buyer would come in and they would be repelled by the energy. So I cleared out the anger from the house. And as I did that, of course, I was clearing the anger out between these two partners. And they did make peace afterwards. And then the house sold like immediately. Wow. So that's one example. So it wasn't about money in a sense, right? Money is just the carrot that allows you to say, I need help, right?
Yeah.
So that was one case. Another case that was really dramatic for me, and I think for the person I was working with, was this was sometimes people come to me, they're not really the kind of people would see a healer. So this was a guy who was sent by maybe his wife or something, and he was trying to put a deal together in Manhattan to buy a building, and he had all the partners who wanted to invest in this. And and he would apply for bank financing, and it fell through every single time. He just could not get the bank financing they need, so they couldn't make the deal happen. And we're talking about a lot of money, because this is a whole big building in Manhattan, commercial. So I did a healing, and what I saw in this case was he had a lot of anxiety that if he didn't make a certain amount of enough money, his wife wasn't going to love him. Yeah, I know. But there it was. And I saw that his wife did love him, and that he could relax. And so I worked on all of this energetically. And of course, after I did the healing, the deal went through. And they made a lot of money. Not that week, but when they sold it. So those are just two examples, but I've done, over the years, I've done a lot of different healings. I remember I did a healing once for a magazine editor who had a lot of debt. And when I did the healing, I saw that, I'm just going to change some details. Okay, so I saw that he really had a lot of shame around the debt. I worked on clearing that. And I held light for, because when you have shame, you can't really move forward and do what you need to do. That's kind of weighing you down. Mm-hmm. And I held light for resolution of the debt. And, within the week, this gentleman refinanced his house, got a better mortgage rate, wrapped the debt into that, so it was off his back. And interestingly, after this whole thing was done, right after, he was downsized from his position. So if he hadn't done it right at that moment, he would not have been able to do all that refinancing. Wow. So that was another example. Sometimes you just need to free somebody so they can do what they need to do. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I find is, when you're in a stressed position about something, you can't see all the options and you can't see all the abundance. So those are just a few examples. I'm sure you've worked with people on similar things, right?
Yeah, I have.
Feeling. Yeah. Do you want to share one?
Well, look, what I'd like to do is share the example of what happened in my case and how you helped me, because I think that is really, that's quite...
I forgot about that one.
Yeah. So this was in 2008, if you recall, and the bank that my husband and I, Anthony and I, had most of our savings, our life savings in, just collapsed. It had been taken over, and banks are often taken over, and there's a merging and so on and so forth. It was really a surprise. We hadn't been given forewarning. So it came as a huge surprise. And I seem to remember we turned the television on and heard about it, via the BBC or something like that. So, so we were looking at the loss of all our savings. And the feeling of fear around financial loss and limitation was very well known to me, because I'd been raised in that kind of environment. So it was this sort of primal fear that came up. And I looked at that. I could feel it energetically as this kind of huge wave. And in that moment, I said to myself, I'm not going to fall into that fear. I have to do things differently, because I just didn't want to keep repeating it. So I remember going off into a quiet space and meditating and going into the sort of the depth of the fear and looking at it. And it felt like this huge pit of despair. And then I started to do visualization around it. And instead of succumbing to the fear in that darkness, I started to imagine this huge golden tree with, big, leaves and beautiful golden leaves and fruit. and this feeling of abundance. So every time fear would come up, then I would do that visualization. So it just so happened that Anthony and I were, I think, a day later flying out to see you and to spend time with you. And what happened was you really helped because you were doing energy work. I was continuing to do the energy work, but you were doing energy work around the situation. And I'll never forget what you said. You said that you can change, this doesn't have to manifest. You can change the whole energy and dynamic of this by just seeing things differently and doing the energy work that underlying the fear around it. So you really helped. You did a lot of energy work around it, and I was continuing to do it. So we had this combined force. And the amazing thing was that we managed to get, obviously it was over a period of years, but we managed to get something like 98% back, which I think I've never heard of that before. Usually when a bank goes under, you'll be lucky if you get pennies in the dollar or pennies in the pound, but we were able to receive most of that back. But the important part for me was that I opted to move forward in my life from an energy of abundance rather than the energy of fear and lack.
I remember another detail about that situation, because I think I turned to you at one point and I said, Julie, you don't have anything to worry about, because you can make more money than you're losing. I mean, you have the opportunity to have so much abundance, and you can. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that.
Listen, I remember you calling me. Tony and I were staying in a nice hotel in Santa Monica. And I remember you calling me at something like 6 a.m. the day we were leaving. And that touched me so much. It's like, oh my God, you were awake at 6 a.m. calling me to make sure I'm okay. And just reminding me to stay in the flow of abundance rather than falling into that fear-based pattern.
Yeah.
And those things are really, because they're so familiar to us, and especially if you've been raised in an environment, and I certainly was in a working class home, where money was limited, food was limited. So you get so used to being in that kind of environment, in that way of thinking, it can be very hard to change that because it feels so familiar.
I mean, when I got married, I think I had all these ideas that somehow the man will support you. Yes. Much to my surprise, that wasn't going to be the case. I mean, I kind of assumed maybe we'd just go be 50-50, but then, it turned out my husband went into a new career and this and that. And so I really had to do a lot of inner work around this idea of, where I was putting my limits. And I thought, I can just open up to abundance. It doesn't have to be from one person or another. It can come through me. And so I had to shift a lot of my constructs, and I did. And it was very helpful.
Yes.
To say the least. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of inner work things that we have to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have to be willing to take an honest inventory and shine light on our beliefs and our patterns and conditioning that we've inherited.
Yeah. The thing that I love about working on manifesting things is I don't think most of the time, most of us realize that the universe is a finely tuned, our energy and the energy of the universe is kind of one, and whatever we're vibrating is what we magnetize to us. And so it's really, I don't want to say it's simple, but, if you change how you're what your emotions are around something, what your thoughts are, what your beliefs are, it will change what you manifest.
Yes. Yes.
And I'll go a step further, whatever you're manifesting, whether it's money or anything else, if you're having a vibration of anxiety, or that, even if you bring in something wonderful, it's going to continue to have that frequency. Whereas if you just really surrender, or as you did, can see the golden light in everything, you'll receive it without those challenges attached to it.
Yes, yes. And all of the, on this theme of manifesting, it's not just about money. I mean, I know we're kind of hardwired in the West to be thinking about that and placing our value and self-worth on, what we're earning and all of those things. But it's really much bigger than that, isn't it? It's about your
everything in your life. Yeah.
Yes, creative flow. The ability to be able to think more expansively with respect to what your life choices are, or what your work choices are. The ability to think outside the box and to, make changes if you're not happy in your job, or, whatever the story is. But it's really, really about having the courage to think differently and to create from that space in a way that...
Even in a relationship, if you're in a relationship and it's not working, I mean, you can, hold the vibration for the relationship to heal. But you can also, depending how challenging things are and whatever, you can open it up. You can step out of the box and just ask for what you want in a relationship. And if it isn't going to happen in this relationship, because sometimes you reach the end of the road, but you can have what you want. And you can't, in a way, you can't get too specific. You can't say, I want it to come in exactly this form. You have to let the universe decide. Like, you can't say, I need this job at this company. You can just ask for the most amazing job that you want, and let the universe solve that, because there might be something much better than what you're wanting, and what you want might not be available for like 20 years. Maybe somebody's in that job, right? So you have to, yeah,
you have to be flexible. So when people reach out to you and want to book a session around, let's say, financial flow or creative flow or whatever, how do you work? Do you work with them? Do you hear their story first, or do you kind of just get an intuitive felt sense of where they're starting?
I try to go in with a completely open mind, even if I have ideas of what they're saying. I might see things, but I really like to get into the energy, be in a healing space and look at the energy of the situation, because honestly, the energy is so much wiser than I am. And then it'll reveal itself to me. And sometimes it's really easy. Sometimes it's one healing, and sometimes it's more challenging, or people can't really, I remember working with one couple, and they were having some financial difficulties in their business. And I really felt like the issue was their relationship, and they really were not ready to go there and heal that. And so the business was going to keep suffering, because the energy, they were working together in the business, and there was something they needed to sort out between them. And so, yeah. But, I want to share another manifesting story from my own experience. Okay. Because, the point of this story is we're always manifesting. So, you can think, oh, I don't need to manifest anything, but, you're always constantly, you're as you're going forward in life, you're manifesting. And sometimes we don't even realize what we're doing. So I want to share this story because many, many years ago, I was, I was in college, and I was thinking of taking a year off, because I didn't really know exactly where I was heading. And I got a job in like the secretarial pool of a magazine. And it was called Family Weekly magazine. And it was a Sunday insert magazine that went into newspapers across the country. And so I'm like, I'd finished 1 year of college maybe. And they always did like celebrity cover stories. Okay. And I told one of the girls, I was working with, it was really what you call a pink ghetto. It was all women doing secretarial kind of work, right? Whatever it was, filing, not editing, but transcribing maybe. And I said to her, I want to write these stories one day. And she said, well, you're never going to do that. She said, you have to be a famous writer. Life went on. And I went back to school. I didn't take a year off. I went back to school and I became a magazine writer and editor. Took some time and this and that. And then I mentioned I'd been freelancing, but one of the positions I did as a freelancer was USA Weekend called me up and they asked me to do some cover stories for them with celebrities. I had a very diverse background, but anyway, I was interviewing celebrities for cover stories. And it took me a while. I might have even been finished with that job when I realized Family Weekly had become, Gannett had bought Family Weekly and changed the name to USA Weekend. And I was literally, I had manifested exactly what I had said I wanted to do.
Wow.
Without even realizing it. And we are all doing things like that all the time.
Yes. Either unconsciously or consciously, right? I mean,
well, that was just unconscious.
Yes. It's just more fun when it's conscious. But on the theme of writing, I decided post awakening, after having this awakening, I was just in this flow of wanting to share and wanting to write. And I just decided one day, I'm going to start writing articles for Mind, Body, Spirit magazines. And I just was cold calling editors and sending them off. And much to my surprise, delightful surprise, they were accepted and they were published. And I remember you saying, after I'd had about, 15 or 20 articles published, you said, it's not supposed to be this easy, and you were just laughing about it.
Well, because, I've been a magazine editor and usually they're like, well, who have you written for before?
Yes.
Let me see your work,
But there was nothing in my life that had told me that it's challenging to get something published. Certainly I didn't have anyone in my family who had sort of been a journalist or a writer or whatever. So I just, I was writing and submitting from this place of expansion and just go with the flow of it.
That's really amazing. Yeah. These manifesting skills that we all have, consciously or not, which, partly it's setting your intention, what you want. And the other part, of course, is clearing any of the internal obstacles, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're external, like if you need to get a degree to be a software engineer, you need to do that, right? But you can use these skills in your everyday life. And I know a lot of people listening are probably doing that. So I'm mentioning it because if you're doing it in one area, you can do it in another area. Getting a parking spot. Maybe it's not an issue in Nassau so much, but in Manhattan, where I've driven a lot, in Los Angeles, it can be a project, right?
Yes.
And so, the important thing is, I try to ask, sometimes I'm going down to the beach and it's a Sunday or a Saturday. And so I just ask, and even if I get there and there are no spots, I'll ask for, a spot in the next 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes,
a spot appears for me in the next 2 minutes. I'll just be in the right place. Somebody starts pulling out. There might be 5 cars waiting, right? So another thing is, on an airplane flight, it's just a good idea to just ask for like ease and grace and harmony at your seat, because you never know otherwise who's going to sit there with you. So it's big and small things,
Yes. And it's really good to, it can kind of sound a bit mundane, I suppose, asking for parking spaces, but
not.
The more we practice these, the small things, then the more it's like building a muscle, the more courageous we become about asking for something that's much bigger, more wide, and more expansive,
Yeah.
So it does make a difference.
One of my teachers always would say this. She would say, neediness sucks. So when you feel you really need it, your life isn't going to be okay without it. It actually is an obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really want to be in a state of flow and surrender and detachment, which sounds simple and sometimes is, the work of a lifetime. If there's something you really want, you feel you're not going to be okay unless you have it. That's when you have to, surrender. And I mean, surrender can take, I've had to surrender almost everything before I received it. And some things can take a long time to surrender.
Yes. And the other part of neediness, neediness sucks is a great thing. As we know, if you have, let's say you're working with somebody that's very needy, it's repelling. It repels you. That energy of neediness really is so sort of desperate, and it seems to kind of pushes people away. That's for sure. And it feels to me like it pushes away the thing that you're most kind of looking for or reaching for, because it comes.
So when you think to yourself, I need to have this, that's a key that you're in trouble.
Yes.
You need to shift that feeling, thought to something like, even when I got that job at Variety, because I, as I said, I was going through a kind of challenging period and I didn't know if I was going to get my book contract. And I was feeling desperate about getting a magazine job. And then it occurred to me, I'd actually had some, divine intervention. And literally, and my whole perspective changed. And I thought to myself, there are 10 gazillion jobs out there. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm not going to get like the job of my dreams, but I can get a job. Mm-hmm. Maybe it won't even be as a magazine editor. That was the detachment, right? I was like, I could get a job. And then, of course, I got the job at Variety and I got the book contract. They both came to me, but I had to reach that point where I was like, I don't need to be in this state of, frenetic desperation. That's what it was, and there's a simple solution.
Yeah. So what kind of advice would you give to people who, let's say they hate the job they're in and they want to create or find something else, but they're feeling desperate about it?
It's a great question. Okay, so if you have a job you hate, the first thing I would do is work with the energy of gratitude. Just thank everything about the job itself, the people you're working with. I mean, I know this is counter to everything. You might hate your boss. Start thanking them because they are your teachers. This job is your teacher. Mm-hmm. And anger, frustration, those are binding forces, and gratitude is a freeing force, So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is, you never want to say, I hate this job. You want to say what you do want. The universe isn't really so great at hearing a negative. Mm-hmm. So what you really want to do is think about what it is you really want, and then keep affirming that you already have it. Not that you're going to have it, because on some dimension, it already is your position. So you have to vibrate it. This is what people don't understand. They think that, if you get something, well, then you'll be happy. But really, you want to be happy. And then you vibrate it. Whatever it is you think you're going to receive from this other job, vibrate that now.
Yes. Just as one example, I remember when I was leaving, my husband and I were leaving the ashram in India. We've been there for 18 months or so, and we were looking for jobs. We needed to find work, and we needed to sort of start earning again. And instead of looking, going online and doing all the research and seeing which vacancies were available and all of those things, I just started making a list about the type of school I wanted to work in, the size of the classes, the subject I wanted to teach. And I started visualizing it and seeing it. And, and that the size, I didn't want to work in a really massive school. I really wanted to work in a very small school that was really community oriented and all of those things. And one day I just happened to be kind of online, and I saw this school on Grand Bahama, a very small international school. And I was like, oh my God, this fits the bill. I sent my CV, and literally within 24 hours, I got a call for an interview. And I was surrounded by people that had been sending out gazillions of resumes, CVs, whatever you want to call it, and really struggling. And I realized, oh my God, it's actually quite easy to manifest if you understand how to do it.
If you're really clear about what it is you want. And then you see, you didn't say, I need to be at X school or Y school. You had no idea where the school was. It was just the energy of it that you wanted. That's the key. There's a few things. One is when you're supposed to be doing something, you'll receive the money for it. It's a form of guidance, really, right? If you can't manifest the money for something, it might be because you're not supposed to do it. Or not now, or yes, whatever, right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So,
yes. Well, here's another little story that's kind of fun. So when we were offered the job, when we left India, and we were offered teaching jobs at this school that I had kind of like asked for. We hadn't been working for 2.5 years, so we didn't have that much money. But I remember I got this intuitive hit, take a dollar bill, and I got a black Sharpie, and I wrote $100,000 on this dollar bill. And then I put it on my altar space. Why 100,000? I don't know, but it just felt like in those days it was a lot of money. That was to me, that was a lot of money in early 2000s, right? To put 100,000, and then I just forgot about it. It ended up going into a little sort of box that I had, and then I don't know. It wasn't even 2 years late. It wasn't that much later. I opened it up, found this dollar bill with 100,000 on it. I thought, oh my gosh, Tony and I have managed to recoup and save, and we've got more than $100,000 in our savings. It was miraculous. It was a miracle. I don't know how it even happened. It just happened.
Because you're aligned with the universe, on your alignment. You know what I mean? That's beautiful. When you are serving in a higher way, the money doesn't always come. The money will come. You'll be supported. This is for people who are, whether you want to be an artist or a healer or, it isn't always going to be a direct route. Sometimes, maybe you'll have a windfall. I know somebody won the lottery. You might have an inheritance. So, there are a lot of different ways and that's, again, you don't always have to understand how you're going to receive what you're asking for. Just allow it. I mean, that's so you don't have to think, oh, I'll never have X and I can't have it, da 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 da. You have to get rid of those thoughts and just ask for what it is that you want, that you, see yourself having. First of all, your worthiness is always, something to look at, whether you feel you are worthy of that. I've just seen that so much, and I'm sure I've had to heal that in myself too. So that's one thing. Another thing, as I said, is the surrender part, getting clarity about what you really want. I mean, this story has come up a few times. This isn't one of mine, but, one of my healing teachers, Rosenbrier, used to tell this story when she would talk about manifesting. And she said, there was somebody she knew who really wanted a red Mercedes for whatever reason, and so she just kept visualizing a red Mercedes, that she would have a red Mercedes in her driveway. And one day, somebody was driving through the neighborhood in their red Mercedes and lost control of the car, and it went right up this woman's driveway into her garage door.
Wow.
So it was a crash in her house, not so wow. This is the trick about manifesting, which is that you don't know where your blind spots are, right? Until you, and so sometimes it is an aspect of trial and error. You ask for the job you want and you get a great job, but there's a boss that's really challenging. Or, I mean, it goes on and on. So you just have to continue refining what it is that you want and where your blind spots are, as you go forward. So that's another aspect. And, the detachment is so key. And the complete faith, this is really important, the complete faith that you and the universe are one. So you're not even really asking something of somebody else, right? There's just oneness. And when your intentions and everything are in alignment, and really there's nothing that could stop that, unless it's literally not your destiny. And then I would say that most of the time when something like that is happening, it's either, there are cases, a lot of times I want to say, if there's something you really are longing for, it's because that is something that you're supposed to be experiencing, doing, whatever. Now, there are cases, because I do work with fertility, and there are cases I've seen where somebody is longing for that and it doesn't happen. And in that case, I would say, I'm thinking of one in particular, where deep down, that person really didn't want to have a child. She thought she wanted to have a child, but she didn't. You have to think about the essence of what you're asking for instead of the form. So, somebody who really wanted to be an actress, maybe what they really want is to experience love and appreciation, to be loved and appreciated. So that you might receive that, but not the actress part, famous actress part. It's a complicated thing, but usually if you have a longing for something, it's there because you're meant to experience that. That's my belief. And then you have to,
yes.
It might be a process to get there. What do you think?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I agree in 100%. I think, especially if it's something that has been there over a period of time, or it keeps coming up and it keeps coming up. If it's just a one-off thing, then, and you change your mind, that's something different. But if it's been this long-held desire, or feeling to create something and it's still there after years, then it's really pointing to something. But it's as if it's already been made manifest on a different plane or another level. And your call to action is to, to sort of bring that forward. And what happens too, what I've seen with clients that I've worked with, is when they don't act and take the first step and at least try to get behind what they're being called to, then depression sets in. There's this kind of depressed feeling.
And then they become immobilized.
Then don't know what to do or give up on themselves.
So it can take courage. It can take a lot of effort, but it has to be, I mean, I can't stress it enough. It has to be with detachment, or you have to work towards detachment. Because I don't think detachment and surrender isn't easy. You can say you're surrendered, but if you're still having frustration or anger or sadness, you're not really completely surrendered. So, I mean, I speak from experience, Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is just say what you want. But, I think sometimes you have to keep refining what you want. Like if you were dating, every time you go on a date, you can refine what it is that you're looking for in a partner. It's a process.
Yes,
sometimes.
it's a process.
Sometimes. Yes. And, I want to go back to faith, because sometimes it's just, is the timing right? Are you ready? Maybe the universe is ready, but are you ready to receive what you're asking for? And that's, something you have to look at.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, because if you're not ready, it's not going to happen, or it won't happen in the way you think it's going to happen.
Yeah, or, it's going to happen 20 years later.
Yes.
Which seems like forever, but then when it happens, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. I always think about this because I think manifesting can be very simple and also can be complex, because, if you look at Tibet, everyone who's Tibetan probably wishes they were a free country, right? And yet that hasn't happened yet. So, life works in mysterious ways. I mean, maybe having a dispersion of the Tibetan teachings throughout the world is really beneficial for the world, Do you see my point? So it can be complex. Yes.
You have a manifesting class coming up, right? I think.
Yes. Yes, I'm going to post it on my website. I believe it's going to be September 17th. Small chance it'll be the 24th, but my website is dianegoldner.com, and I also have an Instagram at Diane Goldner. So, and it'll be posted there too. So I will be doing a workshop, and if anyone here wants to join, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. So you'll be covering some sort of tips,
tricks, techniques, and answering questions, and going even deeper into it than we have.
Fantastic. And doing energy work around it.
Yes. And, the other thing I want to mention is I teach a class called Awakening Your Light Body. I don't know when I'm going to teach it again yet, probably next year sometime. I don't know if it's January or March, but, for people who really want to refine their energy skills and their ability to manifest or perceive energy or work with energy, I love this course. It's really transformative, and it's intensive. It goes for, I think the first segment is 8 weeks, and, whatever. So, but that's something you could look at on my website too. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So, great. Thank you.
Yes. So before we wrap up, do you want to just remind people where they can find you? I will have all of this in the show notes.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyone who would love to work with me, I would love to work with you. Healing for your whatever it is you want to manifest. Baby, money, whatever, all worthy things. So it's dianegoldner.com is my website. And I can be reached by email at dianegoldner.com. Make it easy. Yeah.
Brilliant. Excellent.
Okay.
Well, Diane, yes, thank you so much for joining me. This has been really great. It's been a lot of fun and
always a pleasure.
A lot of a lot of valuable information for people on the subject of flowing, being in the flow, and manifesting. So thanks again. This has been really great.
Thanks.
So
thanks to everyone too.
Thank you. So thank you everybody for joining us today. As always, I really value you spending time here. If you haven't subscribed, you know what to do. And please share and let folks know to come and view Talking True. So take it easy, be well, and bye for now.